We'll call the International Falls Economic Development Authority meeting to order for Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019. City Council Chambers, and the roll call with all members of the authority present. And we have the approval of the minutes of the October 15.
Mr. President,
please.
May I interrupt?
Yes.
Please accept my apologies, but for the Economic Development Authority, we administer the oath of office for that position as well. So
okay.
I failed to put it on the agenda in my haste, so I do have a couple here, so I need to administer that to Commissioners Walt Buller and Leon Deach. So if I may do that before you take any formal action, I'd appreciate it.
Please have the oath of office considered by those new commissioners. Thank you.
Mr. Buller, he's up. Repeat after me. I, Walt Buller.
I, Walt Buller.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
To my ability.
And faithfully and
discharge the duties of Commissioner for the International Falls
Economic Development Authority. In and for the City of International.
My continuance in office.
During my continuance. I further understand
that service on this in my receipt of confidential information. I agree that such information not be disclosed except as otherwise.
Not be disclosed except authorized.
Very good. Thank you.
Welcome.
I, Leon Deach.
I, Leon Deach.
Solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support.
To my ability.
And faithfully and to the best.
Discharge the duties of Commissioner. Falls Economic Development Authority. For the City of International Falls.
In and for the City of International
Office.
During my continuance in office.
I further understand.
And further.
That service on this board.
That service on this.
In my receipt of confidential information.
May receive.
I agree that such information not be disclosed except as otherwise authorized.
Shall not be disclosed.
Welcome to Commissioners Buller and Deach to the International Falls Economic Development Authority. Thank you, City Administrator. We will then move to item 3 under the meeting agenda, and that's the approval of minutes of the October 15 Authority meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Councillor Kraus.
Second.
Second by Councillor Droba. Discussion on the motion or the minutes? Hearing none. Question?
Aye.
I would vote yes. Motion is carried. Minutes are approved. Thank you. There being no one in the audience at this meeting, we'll move to item number 5, and that's the accounts payable. Under A, there are none. 2018 unaudited financial reports will be prepared after the payables are posted late in January. City Administrator, can you advise us on that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. We like to have financial reports prepared and available for your review. Typically, we look at the EDA Fund 208, I believe it is, and the Voyageurs National Park Fund 414. But given that we were at year end, we'll be posting information to all of our various funds after the approvals of today's payables that the council took action on earlier today. So when that information is posted, then we'll be in a position that we can complete the financials for December of 2018. So they're not available until we post those that were approved earlier tonight.
We will have those for our meeting in March?
April.
April. Thank you.
That's correct.
Thank you. And that goes for item B also. Let's see, there was a
There's a
disclosure document on the payment history.
Mayor, if I may, as secretary, we're required as part of our, we have issued bonds for as an economic development authority for the construction of the building where Voyageurs National Park headquarters is located. About 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, the EDA had issued refunding bonds which lowered our cost of issuance and debt service costs. So we issued refunding bonds. As part of the whole transaction, U.S. Bank serves as a trustee for that financial transaction, and we have a responsibility to disclose on an annual basis certain information to them. And so what I've just provided is a copy dated December 2018 of the payment history for the year of 2018, and you can see the amounts that are paid and the date that they were received by the USGS or the GSA, and then our payments that we made the trustee. So that information is disclosed. So this is for EDA information purposes, and we do this on an annual basis, and you can see that was sent to Kelly Stahlberger, who is the trust analyst at U.S. Bank.
The Administrator, does any of this information need to be published? I know that we're not under some of the same provisions that that cities are, but it is authority of the City of International Falls.
It is, and this information for the EDA is also disclosed as part of our annual audit. So and then a financial summary of that's published prior to June 30th of each year. I'm sorry, it has to be submitted to the Office of the State Auditor, and then after that's prepared by our auditor, and we typically don't get a report until June. The auditors actually were conferring with me this week, or last week rather, and they're scheduling April 8th, that entire week, to be here and review all of our all the documentation and the reports that they need to as part of the city audit, the Fire Relief Association audit, and then they are also contracted to do the audit for the International Falls and Coochin County Airport Commission. So they do all three of those audits. And then we typically have a preliminary draft that's submitted in June, and we have a Budget and Finance Committee meeting with them in June where they present their findings, talk about internal controls, anything that appeared unusual, and just what their audit findings are. And we accept the audit report typically at either a special meeting or the second meeting in June, and we are required to publish a summary of the financial statements in the local paper, which we do after that meeting.
And I have a further question, if I may, and that's, so does the auditor also audit the authority, the Economic Development Authority?
Yeah, the EDA financials are included in the cities. I'd have to look at the report again to be specific to see how, but they disclose the EDA financials in there. Our EDA, as you know, having been on here for a while, is relatively inactive other than the financial lease payments that are paid by the GSA on the Voyageurs National Park, and then our debt service payments going out. So that's essentially what we've done. Our budget for 2019 as well as 2018 was a total of $5,000. We budget about $750 for general office supplies and expenses, and then about $4,250 is reserved for professional services if we need the assistance of legal counsel on any issues that might come before the.
And then maybe just for the commissioners, if you reviewed in the resolution that came in the packet, the transfers and the accounts payable, included in the accounts payable, and find the right page here. Page 13 in your accounts payable is the list of costs for Voyageurs National Park. And you'll see that the maintenance and operation of that park building, the cost for the month of December was $10,780.68. So just be aware. And we do have an agreement with the General Services Administration they pay the city to maintain. All right, further.
Question.
Yes, please.
So when is the bond paid off?
That's a good question. Thank you.
I believe it's 2030 or 2031.
And at that point, then we would just make the in the. How much was the initial bond, if I may ask?
I know that funding bonds are over 11 million. I believe I'm not sure what the original issue size was. If it was around 14, it was prior to my time, so I don't recall for sure. I think the funding bonds were around 11,250,000. I believe.
That was about 4 years into the We will move on the agenda, and we will go to item number 6 on reports. Discussion with regard to the housing study. Is there any comments by commissioners with regard to the housing study? Please.
I thought that the housing study, it pretty much identified what we already knew, in my opinion. I think for those of us that work in the social services industry, I think I wasn't surprised at all with the findings. I guess my question is, what do you see, or what do the other counselors see us doing with this information? I know the gentleman that had presented, I believe, was it Steve? I believe that he made a very good point that you have data that you can take to the bank, or you have data that you can put on the shelf and not do anything with it. And I feel that in our current situation, in our current economic climate, I think we need to use that data to our advantage at this point, and it would behoove us to make some sort of plan moving forward. I don't think it would be wise to take that investment that was put in the community and just let it sit. Again, and I'm not proposing that we go out and borrow a bunch of money, but he did, I thought the study pointed out some deficiencies and other things that at some point could be addressed. And again, there's now data that we can say this has been identified as a need by a reputable source. We're not just guessing at this point. We have data to back it up.
Thank you, Commissioner Kraus. I think you've hit it squarely there. No doubt that I think it confirmed that we've got some tired housing, some tired rental units, some tired mobile homes in this community, that there's a need for some improved housing, that we're not seeing as many new houses built in the community. And so I think you're right on with that we need to adopt a plan. I think we need to also make this part of the comprehensive plan so that it continues to be used. And then thirdly, I think as a city council, I would think that the city council ought to take and look at our policies with regard to housing, especially in the area of incentives. And I've always been kind of person that kind of puts the brakes on giving out incentives to anyone, but there may be ways that we could put some dollars and recoup them with new housing coming into the community. That's what I would want to see. And let me give you an example. We have the area on the very west end of town, it's where Shorewood Drive comes to an end, and then Crabtree starts, and you can see it on the large map there on the wall. The owners of that property would be interested in having water and sewer extended, and they've given 2 preliminary plats, but we've never had a final plat laying out the lots in that area. And I think if the city was to extend the water and sewer, which our policy right now would be that the property owners would be responsible for doing that. But if the city was to put some dollars up to do that, extend the water and sewer, might they be able to sell the lots, pay the city back for the cost of the water and sewer, and get some development along there. The city administrator, you were at a meeting where a realtor had said that there's kind of interest in that type of housing in the community.
She had made the comment, I believe it was at an Economic Development Committee meeting I was at for the chamber, that she could sell houses in the price range of $150,000 to $200,000 all day. She would have no problem selling those houses. And she used as an example the Shorewood and the Stenberg additions as examples of the type of housing that people.
And then I think we also have some lots on the east side. Well, we don't have lots, but there are some properties out on the east side of town, what was also known as kind of a Stenberg addition. And I think that, we could look at the possibility of doing some additional expansion of water and sewer and streets in those areas, and see if that would not bring some new development to community. Councilor Droba, please.
Well, number one, you hit on something that I guess I would be interested in. You said that we should add some of these items to our comprehensive plan, and I guess I'm kind of curious on where we're at in our comprehensive plan that we were getting in January of 2018.
Administrator, you want to update us on the comprehensive plan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioners, the information from the housing study, we had approved expending additional monies for them to assist us with that, and so part of what they need is, or part of what we wanted them to update was the housing component of the comprehensive plan. So I have forwarded, before this meeting, when we received the draft copy or the final version of this housing study that Steve Greaser did, I forwarded it via email to Antonio, who's updating the comprehensive plan, and so he was going to incorporate some of the recommendations into the plan. So that was one element that they're working on and updating in the draft that they've already prepared. And secondly, I think the other component that I have asked them to work more on, and this is really what their specialty area is as a consulting company, is on trying to look at connected trails and sidewalk systems, and then do some mapping to show how we continue to promote linkages in our community with our trail system network, and elaborate a little bit more on that. And we have a meeting tomorrow, I guess it is, with a MnDOT representative on the Highway 53 project, and there's been discussions about, as part of their analysis and the plans and specifications development for the Highway 53 reconstruction, is that some of the stoplights are not warranted by the new traffic counts, and so they don't want to install them as part of this new upgrade and reconstruction of Highway 53. One of those is at 11th Street. And I think the argument that we tried to make in when they first presented that to us is that really that's not only a vehicle cross intersection and a major east-west corridor on 11th Street, but also the Blue Ox Trail comes to crosses that there, and there's people bike that, they walk it. It's busy this time of the year with snowmobilers. They stop at the Holiday gas station for fuel. So it's not quite just a matter of looking at vehicle counts, but there's clearly some public safety compromises that would occur if you didn't have a signalized intersection there with that kind of traffic. And so that was part of the rationale, and one of the responses was, well, what do you have for a map to show us that? Well, we don't have it now, but that's what we want to get in our new comp plan. So that would be another element to it that we want.
I would be interested to see, just piggyback on that, I would be interested to see where exactly they put, I know the little traffic counter is that little thing they put across. I'd be interested to see where exactly they had that on the intersection, because I mean, you can go to Holiday at any time of the day between about May 15th and Labor Day, and any time of the day it's exceptionally busy, as that seems to be one of the major stops for people going to or fro Canada. And I would be interested to see where, I know like the peel off that peels off onto 11th Street, a lot of people, if you're southbound, for example, will take that and then skirt across 11th Street to line up with the pumps. And I wonder if they're, that's and living on 11th Street, that's only 4 blocks from my home. I know how busy that intersection is. So, I would argue all day, and then the number of people crossing, and that is a purpose-built crossing for snowmobiles, and that highway is built not to degrade under studs of snowmobiles. That sidewalk is actually concrete and made to handle snowmobiles with carbides and studs. So I would argue, I wonder if their counts, or as people go, perhaps turn in before to go, say, to the jug or to the outdoorsman, if they somehow missed that traffic, because I find it really interesting that the 17th Street crossing warrants it, and the 4th Street crossing warrants it, but the 11th Street crossing doesn't, and I can't see where the traffic would be that much different as far as people going to and fro. That's just my opinion on the matter.
Councilor Droba, further.
And so thank you for the update on the comprehensive plan. The second piece is the water and sewer extension as a part of helping the housing. And I think that would be a really good idea for the city to do that, especially with the Peterson property coming off of Crabtree. As I understand it, we don't have a lot of extra cash for something like that. And it could come out of the 809 fund, and going kind of backwards a little bit, one of the emails that we got from the Chamber of Commerce when we were looking at negotiating the contract for the chamber, they said that the 809 fund has to be wiped clean every year, or we need to take that money out. And I spoke to the deputy administrator, and that is not accurate. That is the monies that we get from timber sales. But if we continue to give the money to the chamber for that form of economic development, it really lessens our ability to do economic development in other parts, because all we've been able to do as a city for as far back as I remember is give away land for $1. So it's a start of economic development, but for housing or something different, being able to help with some of those infrastructure costs, to be able to pull that out of the 809 fund, which also is where we have our revolving commercial loan program. I think that would be beneficial for some economic development. And my last piece that I'd like to point out through the housing study is on page 11 and 12. It talks about specifically some of the initiatives that we've already got on the baseline level to start to, and maybe we could move on, which is promote a rental housing rehabilitation program. We work with the AEO, or Kutaska, to do that, and maybe we're not doing a good enough job marketing that you can get low interest loans and money to do those programs. Promote owner-occupied housing rehabilitation programs, develop neighborhood revitalization programs. I know the League of Minnesota Cities has a lot of information that we could put towards things like that, but again, it's going to come down to money, and as we continue to give appropriations to other people in our community that are great nonprofits, I'm not saying they're bad, but we can't do the services that a city traditionally would be doing. And develop a rental registration and inspection program, and I think that was part of the start that we did with the waters. So now we can see, as people are moving into these buildings, what we're using for what we have that are rental units, and then we could move into a registration and then an inspection program. The last piece that I want to point out of their recommendations that I agree with is the city may need to acquire and demolish structures, whereas right now we're just demolishing them and then leave it to the property owner. Maybe that's something we need to look forward thinking, that if it's a problem for you and it's a problem property, we'll tear down the property and then we'll own it, rehab it, and then sell it at a different rate or whatever. Develop mobile home programs, because I think we're all cognizant that the problems that we're having in our mobile home areas. Door knocked, you probably went to the worst one. The mobile homes are in very, very bad disarray, and we saw that when we went on the bus tour a couple years back. It's a point where we could invest a lot of time and effort into it to clean up, but a lot of them are just off the main road, and I don't know how much time and investment we want to put into that, but our mobile homes are in very rough shape, both physically and spiritually, emotionally. I mean, we have a lot of police calls that go there too, so it's definitely an area we want to look to. And then the last piece is just to develop a mobile home program. So moving forward, as we have mobile homes coming into the community, having a standard that we have in our community, because right now I don't think we really do. So those are the points that I got out of well, actually, I found 22 pages that I found things interesting, but I think that was probably the most interesting pieces to me on the program. But I think we should really be looking at, as we're trying to develop programs, not just the programs that we're going to develop it, but what differences are we going to be making in our budgets so that we are able to put money towards these initiatives as a city. And I agree wholeheartedly on the water and sewer, to build out new properties and possibly use the 809 fund or other funds so that we can develop that.
I agree with the proposal or the thoughts on Shorewood, but that leads me to another question when we're talking about rental property. Is there any kind of criteria that landlords have to have on their houses that they're renting? I know some of them look pretty shabby there. Is there any safety issues that they have to meet before they rent them out, or are they just free to rent whatever they may have?
Peter, you want to?
Thank you, Mr. President. There's a number of issues. We do have standards in the ordinance, and the previous Legislation and Land Use Committee has had an initiative where they wanted to adopt a rental licensing ordinance or upgrade it. And we already have rental licensing provisions in our ordinance. It's just not implemented, or it hasn't been put in place. Typically, those types of ordinances would have an annual inspection requirement where, in our case, it would probably be the fire chief as the housing inspector. It's about a third of his duties is scheduling a rental unit inspection, and then they make sure there's different standards. There's a Section 8 rental licensing or rental housing voucher program that has to be inspected on an annual basis too, but they have different standards than what property maintenance codes for cities have. The goal is to implement that rental licensing ordinance and a property maintenance code into one ordinance. Require landlords to license their properties, and then the city would inspect them on an annual basis.
Is that in the process?
Yes, falls in my court. So and what we've talked about doing is that right now the city code has chapters 4, 6, and 10 that have different components. One of them is like the housing. I think 10 is public nuisance and standards code. So all of those have different elements that are going to be consolidated into this rental licensing and property maintenance code. Kelly and Adam in particular are really pushing it, and they're pushing me to get it done so that we can get something in place. The landlords resisted pretty vigorously last time when we had talked about it. There was a group of about a dozen of them in here, and it was shortly after I got here, and so they decided to kind of slow it down a little bit, but the previous council has said it's a priority and they need to get it done. So but we have to be prepared, I think, as a city, when we really commence doing that, is having the human infrastructure and the systems in place to go out, schedule the inspections, do the inspections, and there's going to be some pushback. I mean, you've heard some of the pushback that we've got just writing citations for calendar parking violations. You start writing people up for having holes in their screens, having smoke detectors that don't work. I mean, it's just like big brother, big government, get out of my life thing. But, and quite frankly, it's not an issue where landlords are necessarily remiss and bad landlords. There's some that aren't really properties up to standard, I guess I would say, but a lot of them are also situations where you have some really bad tenants that trash these places, and they don't care what it looks like. They don't keep their garbage picked up. So there's just a lot of different components to the blight problem, and it's not isolated to just rental properties. There's actually owner-occupied problems where we had the same. Pointed out at the last committee meeting we had, is that it's also in the commercial industrial sector and not isolated to just the residential. So I think the rental licensing ordinance and the property maintenance code is really going to be focused on addressing those residential compromises that we have in the community to try and rectify the blight conditions that we have, and try and do that over time.
Councillor Kraus, please.
Today in the city council meeting, we have, in the consent agenda, we always have licenses. Is there a fee for a snowplow license? Is there a fee for these other licenses? So do we have a fee structure set up for rental property licenses?
The new ordinance would have a fee structure. There would be a fee. I don't want to say what the fee is, because I don't know what it is, because we haven't implemented the rental housing. We inspect houses for violations on a complaint basis. The blighting conditions and influences, and the mayor's been real involved. I mean, you entertain a lot of the complaints, and then pass it on to the appropriate people to follow up on it. If it's abandoned vehicles and stuff like that, that becomes a police issue. So there's kind of different elements or different departments of the city that get involved in different complaints.
And as chair of the committee in question, this is on my agenda as well. I feel that rental, and again, working in the social services sector like I do, I find that our rental properties are, for lack of a more eloquent way of putting it, subpar. The majority of them that I've been in on an almost daily basis. And I feel that a small nominal fee per property, and I often wonder, as a person who has rental property in the family, I often wonder if these rental properties are even zoned properly. Are they zoned commercial? Are they zoned residential? Where do they sit? I think by creating a fee-based schedule, and I'm not saying we have to fleece anybody, but a nominal fee to be able to conduct business like every other business, every snowplow, liquor license, daycare, every other thing that we're licensing. I see this to be no different. I know there will be pushback. I'm prepared for that. I think that we owe it to the cities, or to the citizens of the city of International Falls, to do something about the rental conditions. And the housing study made it blatantly obvious that I believe the last apartment complex to be built in the city of International Falls was in the 80s. And we have a housing and redevelopment authority that runs Woodland Apartments and nothing else, as far as I know. Then that was built in the 80s. So, and I know in the 60s. So we have this commission that is running a facility that is 50 plus years old, potentially, and I just feel like we're doing a major disservice. Actually, depending upon when it was built, almost 60 years old. We're
69, I believe it was.
okay, so it's 50. We're doing a major disservice to the residents, and we're also, I feel, stifling development in our commercial development, because if you're young, if you're coming here as a teacher or a young professional or an executive in the mill or whatever you're coming here to do, where are you going to live? We have houses, but not everybody wants to. If you're an untenured teacher, the last thing you want to do is buy a house in the community, because chances are every year your job goes up to the school board and you may or may not be coming back. So you can't saddle yourself with that. But I think, if we can get these properties inspected and have this fee which can help pay some of these costs and start getting this stuff up to par, I think that's a major complaint that I see quite often is I get into crisis work. My landlord, my heat's out, my landlord won't fix it, or this or that, and I can't get into detail. But I think if we had a fee structure that would provide some funding for these inspections to get our people out there to get a look at these, I think our housing stock and it's only going to go up, and I think it's only going to increase the value of the city on top of everything else. We're not implementing new taxes, but looking and saying, you know what, we need to fix this and make this a little bit better and make sure it's zoned properly and that somebody's being held accountable, because I don't feel that there's a lot of accountability, and that's an opinion, but it's an opinion based on a number of facts.
And I would just want to caution you that, I'm sure if we put a fee on landlords, probably the renters are going to pay that fee. So I think we got to be careful about how we do that. Two other points I just want to make. One, I don't want to make the Shorewood extension seem like it's just a water and sewer. There's also a wetlands issue that needs to be overcome there too. So keep that one in mind. We need to spend more time on all of this. And then last, and to Commissioner Deitch's point on having reviews, we do have HUD subsidized housing in the community, and we have an agreement with the county HUD director that we will inspect, and I'm thinking it's 5 or 7 units.
About 7.
7 units a year that we inspect, and that would be with the fire chief and the building inspector going together. So those are inspected over a period of time also.
Because I know it was many years ago, I think it was HUD, that would refurbish a house and then give it to somebody at a very low rate. Do they still do that?
Not familiar with that program.
The last I heard of that program was in the mid-90s. The last time I heard of a house being, I know the program you're referencing, but I can think of a house that was done in about 1996. Would have been
It's probably about the time I'm thinking also.
Now,
Yes.
back to Councilor Droba's point about working with Kutaska, we did have a program here where landlords could secure, and I don't remember the exact dollar, was it about $40,000, $42,000, that they could make improvements to a single-family dwelling, and they could get a contractor to do that kind of improvement. They had to pay a third, and Kutaska under HUD would pay 2/3. It was something of that nature.
Yes, there was, the city applied for, and Kutaska was the administrator of the grant for us. We applied for Small Cities Development Program grant funds from the Department of Employment and Economic Development, and we were awarded about $646,000. I'm throwing round numbers out there. And so we were excited about that, and it included commercial rehab, and I think the Cantor Electric had improved their facade. I think Nancy Emhoff had done some stuff at her building. And then it included that, I think it was single-family rental rehab too. And as the mayor pointed out, the contractors need certain certifications. I believe it's on lead-based paint and some other, it might be asbestos, I don't remember. So there aren't any in the immediate area here. And they said when we applied for this might be a problem. And there is somebody that's certified down in, I believe, North Home that came up and has done some. But we actually turned money back because nobody would apply. And I think it was a 3-year time frame where it had to be spent. Maybe it was 2 years. I actually approached them and I said, we need to do something to market this before the money. And they said, you know, we can't get any contractors up here to do the work. And by the time you go through the whole process, you know, there's some, and the contractors don't get paid right away because you got to wait. You know, you got to expend the money, make the improvement, submit an application, then it has to go through an inspection process before they'll award sending the money out. So contractors, if they can just do the other work and not have to deal with those headaches, they just do it that way. Sure.
There was one particular contractor out of Nashwauk that was doing a number of the properties, and he actually got burned out on it. He finally decided, I can't do this anymore because it was such a process. I know he did 3 properties for sure, and then just said, I can't do this anymore. And he,
Nashwauk or up here?
Up here. He was from Nashwauk,
okay,
but was or the Nashwauk-Keewatin area anyway, but was licensed to do that work. And he was having difficulty, like even procuring somebody to clear the snow away so he could get to the building, and it was just kind of a very tedious process.
Does the city have many buildable lots, empty lots that are buildable that were forfeited?
Forfeited?
Well, the tax, whatever it may be, that the city owns? No.
There's a number of empty lots in the Stenberg addition, which is down in County Road 2 or 11th Avenue, down in that area.
Belongs to the city? No.
No,
I'm just saying city.
City,
The city
no.
owns nothing.
no.
But I think that's one of the things, you know, we want to, staff would like to revisit the demolition program that we have. And we've got 2 pages of, you know, sometimes it's sheds and garages that we've taken down, sometimes it's single-family homes. We spend a lot of money on it, and we're just not seeing people reinvest in these empty lots. We get rid of the eyesore, which is what the intent of the program is. I would like to maybe take it another step further and try and, through this process, have the city actually acquire the properties and then be able to make it available for somebody else that is willing and able to. Maybe they buy the lot below market rate, but then they'll invest in, as a condition of purchasing it, build a house on it.
Right. That's what I was basically getting at indirectly, that some of these lots, and evidently you don't own them at this time, could be turned over to the public for building and meeting certain criteria. Years ago, South Couchiching District 363 had a program called Bidstead. I don't know. Basically what they did is they went through the legislature and everything else and freed up federal or government land, and these lands were offered to the public with improvements. And you could get, I don't remember what it was, 20 acres, 40 acres, whatever it may be. All you had to do is apply for it and then meet a criteria of when this land would be developed. And when that date was met, it would be turned over. It did not work out, but it was the right idea, especially in something in an area like this, if there was empty lots that the city owned.
An incentive. Commissioner Buller has a question, please.
Through Casca here a while back, there was an energy audit program that they had where they'd come in and they'd put new windows in and siding and on low-income people that own the home. I know a couple of them that went through that. Did that program ever just go away, or is it something that nobody looks at, or?
Those are some of the improvements that this other program that we had applied for could be used for, but it was specific to, I think, single-family rental properties. And then because it wasn't receiving any, we weren't getting any applications, they modified it, I think, for multifamily, and it just ran out of time because of the state funding requirements. There wasn't enough time to continue. So we turned back, I think it was $400,000. Which really, it was upsetting to me, because that's $400,000 that I would have liked to see invested in this community, and there's no shortage of need, which everybody knows.
Didn't continue through this summer and fall? this program of renovating some houses? I'm just wondering, because there's one down by our place and another one a few blocks away that I know that they couldn't have afforded to re-side and re-roof. So I was wondering if it was a program like that.
Well, there's funds like the Minnesota Fix-Up Fund, and I don't remember what the terms are. I used to issue those loans when I was down as the community development director down in Columbia Heights, but we were an authorized lender, and we would actually do that. It's a 1 or 2 page application process. It's relatively easy. You can do improvements, those kinds of things. And Border State Bank is an authorized lender up here in this area. I don't hear them market it much, but they said if some people come and talk to them, they can access that resource or that funding source for those kinds of improvements, and perhaps it was done through a private lender. I would like to see that marketed more because I think that there's...
I know the 2 houses that were redone look totally different.
I think we've spent adequate time on the housing, and I know that Commissioner Droba has a commitment at 6 o'clock, and so I want to move forward on item B under reports is the key to representatives, and Councillor Droba and I represent the City of International Falls on the Koochiching Economic Development Authority Board. Commissioner or Councillor, do you have anything that you'd like to share with the other members here with regard to economic development or projects that are being worked on? And I'm thinking cold-weather testing and build right might be a couple that we might just touch on.
If you want to touch on those, I'll just say this, that in the last 2 years, one of the things that has came up is tax abatement that's been looked at with the city with the data center. Tax abatement is being put into play with the Rainier Cantilever project. I like that as a possibility moving forward. It has to be the right fit, but that's one of the things that is kind of unique. Koochiching County is doing that now, whereas a lot of other counties have been doing it for a while. Just another tool that we have in our economic toolbox. Besides that, there's small projects that are going on in our community all the time, and we just don't see them. They're not those glaring remodels where Menards does a huge expansion or they build a new facility for the Good Samaritan Center. But we do have lots of small economic growth. Small Business Administration is doing a very good job in trying to grow the businesses that we have in our area. Again, all of you guys are welcome to come to our KEDA meetings, and I think both Mayor Anderson and I do a pretty good job about trying to bring the information back to our meetings, especially when it's specifically prevalent to International Falls. But that's all I really have.
What is the progress on the old TP? Now, I understand that's been sold. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that's all the information I have on it, other than they have, I heard, not from a direct source, but I have heard that they have got bids for the demolition of the property through their own contractors, that they are not looking at the City of International Falls any longer.
And do they have plans for that lot?
I do not know that.
On cold weather testing, I would just share with you that I think we have a continued successful cold weather testing program here. You likely know that there are 3 cold boxes that the city and county have built together and leased them out to clients during the winter months and even at other times during the year. And we have testing going on all the time. There's some businesses are here, or some firms are here all year round doing driving of vehicles. We've had other firms visit the community in the last couple of months that are interested in coming here. What we lack is facilities, and testing grounds. And so the discussion that we had at the our state representative and state senator is that we may be looking again to go back to the legislature for some bonding dollars to help us be able to do that. So that is one item. And then, of course, you know that we lost the Build-Right manufacturing facility in April of 2018. And I can tell you that Executive Director Nevin and myself have had discussions with interested firms in purchasing that, but we have not had successful negotiations with the family up to date. So just let you know that that is out there and is still a possibility. Questions you might have further on the KEDA? All right, thank you. We'll move to item C under reports, and that's the election of officers of the International Falls Economic Development Authority, and we'll start with President. The nominations for President.
I would nominate Commissioner Buller as the president of the EDA.
Okay, Commissioner Buller has been nominated. Further nominations? Further nominations for a second time?
I don't like this smile at all.
And if you want to decline, I mean, I certainly know that being here for the first time is a challenge for everyone, but...
Oh no. First meeting, first night ever, I was elected to the president of the EDA. You are going to do a fantastic job.
All right.
I'd do the vice president the first year.
Decline?
Decline that.
Okay. So Commissioner Buller is declined. Further nominations then for president. President. Well, you know, I think we've got the meetings down to 4 times a year, and I think we really try to spend most of our energies through KEDA and not do. I know that the city administrator gets contacts about folks who are interested. He turns them over to Executive Director Nevin to work with. The city administrator works with them, myself, and so I think it's been a great team effort and working together with the county. And Councilor Droba has been serving on that KEDA board for 4 years now.
I would accept if someone would nominate.
I was going to nominate you.
Okay. Commissioner Droba has been nominated. Further nominations for a second time. Further nominations for a third time. Nominations are closed. A motion would be in order to have Commissioner Droba be the president.
I move to make Commissioner Falls Economic Development Authority.
Motion by Commissioner Kraus.
To second that.
And second by Commissioner Buller. Discussion? Question?
Aye.
I vote yes. Motion is carried, and Commissioner Droba is president of the International Falls Economic Development Authority for the next year. Is it 2 years? What is the term, city administrator?
4.
Life sentence.
Lifetime appointment, like Supreme Court.
You know, it's specified in the bylaws. I was going to print a copy of those out before I came up, and
So it's either a year or 2 years. I don't recall. All right. Nominations for vice president.
I would nominate Commissioner Buller as vice president of the EDA.
Buller has been nominated. Further nominations. Further nominations for a second time. Nominations for a third time. Nominations are closed. Motion would be in order to...
I move that Commissioner Walt Buller be the Vice President of the International Falls Economic Development Authority.
Commissioner Kraus moves a unanimous ballot for Commissioner Buller as Vice President of the Authority. Second.
I'll second.
Second by
Harley dies, you're president, right?
discussion. Question.
Aye.
Aye. And I would vote yes. Motion is carried. Commissioner Buller is elected Vice President. Treasurer, and who is the treasurer at this time? Councilor Drobe is, okay. Nominations are open for treasurer.
Joe Kraus.
Okay. Kraus has been nominated as treasurer. Further nominations? Nominations for a second time? Nominations for a third time, and nominations are closed. A motion would be in order.
I would make the motion to have our treasurer be Commissioner Kraus.
Okay, we have cast a unanimous ballot for Commissioner Kraus as treasurer of the International Falls Economic Development Authority. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Deitch. Discussion? Question?
Aye.
I will abstain.
I would vote yes. Motion is carried, and Kraus is elected by unanimous ballot as treasurer. Assistant treasurer, is that the deputy,
Deputy Administrator.
or is that the,
Deputy Administrator.
is it deputy administrator?
She's the assistant treasurer,
Assistant
but
treasurer, thank you.
her title is a deputy city administrator, and then I've been the secretary in the past, and I'd probably recommend we continue to do that because there's some requirements for signatures and
A motion would be in order to
So moved.
have the deputy administrator be the assistant treasurer and the city administrator be the secretary of the International Falls EDA. That motion has been made by Commissioner Kraus,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Droba. Discussion? Question?
Aye.
And I would vote yes. Motion is carried. And Deputy Administrator Bergstrom and is as treasurer, and secretary is Ken Anderson, city administrator. Thank you.
Give Harley the gavel, he's driving.
Okay.
All right, our next item is going to be the IFEDA Advisory Board. I just want to let everyone be knowledgeable that they haven't met in better part of a year, maybe even 2 years. Before I became president, it was my intention to make a motion to start the process to change the bylaws to remove Article 5, which is having an advisory committee. It's my thoughts personally that the advisory committee had a time and place when we first got going onto this. We have changed we've shifted what we do as an EDA, and we utilize the KEDA, which we have direct representation for a lot of the things that we do. There is some things in the community that need to be addressed, but to no fault of their own, we don't have a working IFEDA advisory board, and I think it would make sense to just remove it from the bylaws, because this is the board that makes the decisions anyways. So it can only hurt us by offering a committee to give us recommendations of what to do and then not follow through with those recommendations. It's just my thought.
We revise the bylaws and eliminate section on the National Falls Economic Development Authority Advisory Board.
I will second for sake of discussion.
We have a motion and a second, open for discussion.
May I?
Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wonder if the advisory board, I agree that the advisory board is probably an obsolete vehicle for this board, but I wonder if somehow involving the Chamber of Commerce and its membership could be a useful resource, if you will, for ideas, guidance, moving in this direction. Not necessarily creating a full advisory board, but perhaps inviting the chamber board to a meeting or something in that order. Since they are we're the economic development authority, but they're kind of a vehicle for the businesses to maybe have an opportunity to have their voices heard. It could perhaps encourage chamber membership. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility to maybe look at it in the future. I'm not saying we need to move on it today, but in the future, I think I've had conversations after our meeting, after our committee of the whole meeting. I was approached in public by some members of the Chamber of Commerce, and they just kind of wanted to know what our thoughts were, and maybe this could be an opportunity for them to have a little more information as far as economic development is concerned.
Mr. Chairman, I would concur with what Commissioner Kraus has said. I think that, and the city administrator serves on the chamber has a economic development committee made up of a number of folks, and I think you're absolutely correct. If a business is coming to town, they're going to come to another business or to the Chamber of Commerce looking for information, or they're going to come to the city or the County Economic Development Authority, which is marketed quite widely. I know when I ran for mayor back in 2012, I heard extensively from the citizens that they wanted the city council to work with the county board, and that's why we've really focused towards working with the KEDA, trying to work together. And so previous to that, the city council had sued the county on a couple of occasions. There was some bad blood that had built up, and I know that the citizens said, please work together. That's what we need in this area. We're too small to be fighting amongst ourselves. So I would agree that maybe we ought to have them visit at a meeting sometime, the Economic Development Committee, and give us some feedback or thoughts.
I just feel that they would be a committed resource, if you will, or a board, a vehicle that is currently obviously invested, but meeting, and I think it kind of fits the mission statement that if we are the primary contact for expanding or starting a business or community development project, I do believe that bringing them on board, at least getting their input, I think it would be.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? So the motion on the floor is to start the process to change the bylaws to remove Article 5. With no other discussion, all those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Directors or secretaries report. Or just go with the information that has been provided.
Just remember the chair is leaving at 6 o'clock. So.
Yep, no, I just wanted to, I try to provide information for the EDA and just for informational purposes, there is a report that we have to submit every year on the TED grant that we had got, which was to extend some utilities to the multimodal site, and we have to submit that by the end of the month. I provided a copy of the one we had provided last year, and I'll provide a similar one this year, so that's just for your information so that you know that that's in process. I've also included a couple of articles that I come across here periodically, and a lot of this stuff, one of the things that was interesting was about the city of Faribault and how it was unique that they could have so much interest from foreign-owned companies in a small community in Minnesota. So there's just some things that I've highlighted, just some some important facts that, if there's something that we can replicate here in International Falls, I just want to bring those to your attention, prompt some ideas and some thoughts when you're talking to your constituents or other people about trying to promote business opportunities here in the city. And the last one, as you can see, is an article that was in the it's just an example of how one city, it was St. Petersburg, Florida, was fighting blight, and they actually turned to the courts to try and help them out. And I'm shocked at how much success they've had in such a short period of time for the course of 4 years. So, and similar things, but again, it's just information.
And then maybe just on the blight issue for 1 second, Mr. Chair. The city council took action last fall to take down 5 structures, and that will be going before the court this year. The city attorney is processing those through the court right now. So hopefully we'll get approval from the court to remove those buildings.
All right, any other business to come before us? Hearing no other business, this meeting is adjourned.